Welcome to WizeUp. I'm Paul Arthur. Today talking about abortion and the sanctity of life. Always a hot debate, of course, in Canada and around the world. And, the one side does believe that they're protecting reproductive rights, and the other side, believes strongly that they're protecting the unborn and their lives. All right, so we'll jump into that in a moment. Before we do, quick reminder to hit subscribe and to tell your friends about us as well. Appreciate you taking the time for joining us in this show here. Our guest today is Cameron Wilson. He's the executive director of the Wilberforce Project, their website, thewilberforceproject.ca. Cam, good to have you with us.
Thanks for having me, Paul.
You bet. And why don't we just first of all take a short bit here to tell people what the Wilberforce Project is all about. I know you do a lot of political activism as well, trying to convince politicians to see things, that value the sanctity of life.
So the Wilberforce Project is the new name for Alberta Pro-Life. We are a pro-life organization dedicated to fighting for women, girls, women, and the preborn, through politics, through changing laws and public policy, because we believe that laws save lives and that human beings have human rights, and that those human rights begin when the human being begins, which is at fertilization. We know that from science. So our job is to make sure that our laws reflect that reality.
Yeah, and it's a pretty steep uphill road. Let's maybe start with, you have a campaign going on right now called the Right to Hope campaign. And this is really quite profound. I don't think a lot of Albertans, a lot of Canadians realize what some of the policies we have in this province when it comes to babies that are born prematurely. You'd think, okay, doctors, the pledge, do no harm. We want to save that baby, right? Mm-hmm. Apparently not, depending when the baby's born. Do you want to unpack that for us?
So right now in Alberta, we have a bit of an outdated system. One of the problems with having a universal healthcare system is that the government has to sign off on all changes. And so when the science and the technology advances, the government can lag far behind that. And what we're seeing when it comes to extremely premature babies is precisely that problem. So right now there's a policy that says officially doctors in the healthcare system are not supposed to fight for babies who are younger than 23 weeks gestation. So if they're born before 23 weeks, they're not supposed to fight for it. Now, we've heard many stories of doctors doing just that, but the official policy is that they don't. And so if you have a doctor who doesn't want to do that, they don't have to. And there's really nothing that parents can do about that. And that's really quite tragic. And there's lots of debate back and forth about, what do you do with a 22-week-old baby, 22-week gestation baby that has a very low chance of surviving? Is it better for parents just to hold them and love them for that last? Is that the most loving thing you can do for that child? Or is the absolute, to me, the answer is that this should be up to the parents, right? Just like,
but it shouldn't be government policy saying, you know what, if the doctor doesn't agree with it, too bad, you're out of luck. And you literally have to watch your baby die, and they're there with all the equipment. And we hear the stories of some babies at 21 weeks even, who end up surviving. Yes, they have to battle, but they end up thriving later in life, and there's no long-term negative effects.
Exactly, 19 is actually the youngest, and once again, like, parents should just have that right to the hope. If there's a chance their child can survive and they want to take that chance, they should be they are the ones who have the right to make that decision, especially in a healthcare system that has taken away all other choices but their system. To have the one-size-fits-all taxpayer-funded system in America, you can go down to the hospital down the road if this one doesn't want to do it, right? You can shop around, you can do those you have the freedom to make those decisions for your family. But here in Canada, we've got the one-size-fits-all system, which shouldn't be taking rights away from parents when it comes to fighting for what they believe is best for their child. And so parents should have the right to hope. And so we're advocating for the government to get rid of that artificial 23-week limit and just say parents are allowed to ask for that doctors do all they can at any point in gestation.
Yeah, and this is the law in Ontario, I understand. I'm not sure how many other provinces have similar policies to Alberta, but the one in Ontario makes a lot more sense because then again, it's the doctor's there, the parents are there, they decide together. Ultimately, the parents have the final say in that, not the doctor.
Precisely, yeah, and we've heard of stories about children who are born 21, 20 weeks old and survive and grow up to have these wonderful, amazing lives, and it only happened because there wasn't this artificial government line in the sand that reflected science from like 40 years ago and is completely outdated now. And we've long had the capacity to save these children. We just, for whatever reason, this law has never changed, or this policy.
So how do we change this policy then? How do we change the law? See, part of me wonders even, I don't know how many politicians in Alberta are aware of this particular policy. They may not be. I think, again, most of the general public is probably not aware. So how do you get their attention? How do you actually, practically speaking, get it to change?
So we've got a petition on our website, the wilberforceproject.ca. You go to the petition sign, you can go there. We also have a bit of information about it under the issue pages on Right to Hope Updated, where we talk about that. We've put together a public policy research paper on this. So if anybody is interested, they can send me an email at ed@twp.life, and I will send them the full research paper that we put together. And once you've done that, just bring it to your MLA. Because you're right, a lot of MLAs don't know. Some MLAs do know and are actively fighting.
Okay.
But a lot of MLAs don't know, and it's important that the ones that don't know are given the chance to do the right thing on this. So pass it along.
Yeah. I mean, in one sense, I mean, it shouldn't even be controversial. I think the vast majority of Canadians and Albertans would say, well, of course that makes sense. You leave it up to the parents, and I mean, why wouldn't the medical community fight for the lives of the premature babies if that's what the parents are wanting, right? It makes sense to me. Now, on the other hand, there's another part to this, and that is when it comes to late-term abortions. So I'm reading here that the Canadian Institute for Health Information, CIHI, in Alberta, apparently we reported a total of 133 late-term abortions last year. 28 of those babies, I was blown away by 28 of them out of 133, were born alive. Okay, so, things didn't go planned, according to plan there, I guess. And so these babies are simply left again to die. So what kind of death is that? I can't imagine it's a pleasant death. They are feeling pain, they are struggling to breathe, and they are totally ignored. No one's touching them, and they end up dying. The only difference, between that baby and the next one that they're fighting for is this one isn't wanted. That shouldn't determine, well, you're human if you're wanted. If you're not human, or sorry, if you're not wanted, then you're not human. I mean, how does that make any sense in any world, right? So, yeah.
And it's illegal already, is the thing to remember. This is already a criminal offense. The criminal code states that a human being becomes a person when they proceed in a living state entirely from the body of their mother. Right? That's the criminal code.
So why is that law not enforced then?
And it's one of those bizarre political developments where we have entire sections of criminal code being applied extremely selectively or not at all, depending on whether that application of the law would benefit the political left or whether it wouldn't benefit the political left. And so the political left, of course, isn't going to lock up an abortion doctor for failing in their duty to, they had one job. That's a horrible, immoral job, and they couldn't even do that. And rather than expose them to malpractice, they allow them to basically kill by negligence these children, even though they have a moral obligation as doctors to take care of their patient the moment it comes out, and a legal obligation as doctors. And failure to do that is negligent homicide.
Yeah, we need to start taking this seriously. Obviously, we're not at this point. Recently you probably heard the big uprising, public sentiment just very, very vocal in Ontario with the experiments on dogs being conducted at an Ontario hospital. And of course, the dogs are subjected to heart attacks, and they're forced again to go through maybe even up to 3 hours of this heart attack and before dying. And this is inhumane treatment. Well, what I mean, if people are all upset about this and they're on the horn with their politicians because this is happening to dogs. Now, if this is happening to premature humans, I mean, they're humans, they're born alive, and we just, whatever.
Yeah. I mean, the reality is by 24 weeks gestation, there's no debate in the scientific community, no serious debate that that child can feel pain. There's some debate that it might be able to feel even more pain than you or I, and that's a very controversial position. And there's also a very strong argument to be made that as early as 12 weeks, a preborn child can feel pain. And then there's the philosophical debate of can you feel pain if you don't psychologically recognize you're feeling pain? But regardless, by 24 weeks, the child can psychologically recognize it's in pain and feels the pain. We are at the very least inducing heart attacks on these children, if not also dismemberment. So it depends on the type of abortion. Usually it's a heart attack at this point in time, sometimes saline, but very rarely now. But usually it's a heart attack. And anybody who's had a heart attack can tell you that it is an extremely unpleasant experience.
Yeah.
And this is being done, we're basically torturing these children to death at 24 weeks, all paid for by tax dollars. And surely, especially when we recognize at 24 weeks, this child is capable of living outside of the womb.
Mm-hmm.
It's a viable child outside of the womb. The difficulty, you still have to deliver the child either way. Right?
Yeah.
Whether you're doing an abortion or not, you're still delivering the child. It's just you're delivering one dead and one alive. So why are we paying paying tax dollars to kill a child when the exact same trauma is going to go through the mother's going to go through the exact same trauma either way? One results in this human being being alive, and the other results in it being tortured to death. So I think we need a law on this. There's no question about it. It's utterly barbaric, the idea that we should be torturing children to death with taxpayer dollars in this country.
Absolutely. So we need to be contacting our MLAs, even our members of parliament on this. Now, by the way, if we compare laws on this particular issue here with children that are born prematurely, are laws in Europe any more friendly to the unborn? Or to the born, pardon me. I guess they're just premature, yeah.
So I haven't looked into the New England law a whole lot. Or the new British law, but other than that, I don't know a lot about that one.
Okay.
But other than England, every country in Europe has some sort of law on abortion. In fact, to my knowledge, there's only one country in the world other than Canada that still has no law on abortion, and that's North Korea.
Yeah, well, we're in great company there, huh?
China used to have no law, but they passed a law against abortion because they were horrified that they were one of the three holdouts on this. They actually passed a law against it to regulate it. Canada and North Korea are the only countries in this club where we torture children to death with taxpayer dollars.
Selah, we need to ponder that and get off our butts, basically. So we can bring about change. Let me ask you about that, though. What kind of changes have you seen? You guys have been at this for a while. Do you have some success stories of either laws being amended or pro-life politicians being elected?
Yeah, actually, we've seen a lot of success on both of those fronts, on getting politicians elected and defeating pro-choice politicians.
Okay.
And in particular, I don't know if you remember Leela here. But Leela here was the former MLA for Chestermere. She was a cabinet minister under the Kenney government, former Wildrose MLA, hot shot in the conservative movement. She was taken out by an incumbent who's pro-life, or by an opponent who was pro-life. And the reality is, I mean, Leela here was taken out, and a whole host of other pro-choice MLAs. I mean, of all the most important pro-choice MLAs of 5 years ago in the UCP caucus, none of them are still active today. I mean, it was Peter Guthrie, Leela here, and Whitney. down in Calgary, and these were the big names on that, and they're all gone, right? That brand of conservatism isn't a successful brand anymore. Whether you lose your nomination or whether you lose in the general election, you still need to mobilize people who believe that human beings have human rights in order to win the election. So that's very positive. Another change that a lot of people don't remember is during the last government, one of the last pieces of legislation they successfully shepherded through was changes to the labor code here in Alberta that allowed that allowed families who had a miscarriage to take bereavement leave. So before that, you had to lose a child that was born before you got bereavement leave. They changed the law to allow miscarriage as well. And interestingly enough, they added an abortion in that list if you had an abortion, you could take bereavement leave, which was something I actually supported.
Yeah.
Because when you think about it, women who are going through this, they're going to take time off anyways. I mean, nobody who goes through an abortion isn't going to take time off. We have to have compassion for the reality of what they have gone through and experienced. And at least this way, they're taking time off for the right reason, to mourn a child that has died. And what's interesting is we got the NDP 100% behind that, in fact, demanding this amendment. And so we tricked the NDP into tacitly acknowledging that abortion kills a human being, which is a pretty big win in my books.
Yeah, that's very, very interesting. But that is something we don't probably hear a lot about is, what is the effect on the woman after going through an abortion? Okay, both physically, there's a spiritual element, of course, but also psychologically, emotionally, when you fall, and I'm not talking just immediately afterward, but if you track that down over the years that follow, what effect does it have on women?
It has a lot of different effects, and the more we study the issue, the more we realize it kind of reverberates through the human person. And it's not really all that surprising when you think about it, right? Whether you believe in that human beings are designed by God or designed by random chance. I mean, obviously, I believe they're designed by God. We were designed with a purpose, and that purpose is the prosperity of our species, of human beings, right? And it makes perfect sense that when you rend that by killing your own children, which are necessary for the prospering of the human species, that's going to have deep anthropological damage inside the human being. And that anthropological damage will be manifest in the body through illness, whether that's because of depression or whether depression brought about by spiritual crisis or any number of effects that come about as a result of being doing something that's being involved in something that's so profoundly inhuman that it damages the human being. Now, this is not to say that women who've had abortion are terrible people. I know lots of them who are wonderful, amazing people, and I'm not here to judge. We have our work cut out for us, saving preborn children. I have no time in the world for anybody who wants to consider themselves superior because they haven't had an abortion. I mean, that's just not worth their time, not worth their energy, and it's false. But there is a reality that abortion does have these consequences, and it does damage the human person, whether through increasing the risk of breast cancer, increased levels of depression and anxiety, PTSD in some women, all of these factors, and a whole host of other ones. I mean, as I said, the more we study it, the more we realize that there are profound consequences that can come about through being post-abortive. And all of these things are things that need to be talked about. There's information that ought to be given to women who are about to have an abortion. They should actually see an ultrasound of their abortion, of their preborn child before they have an abortion. They should go in with a full amount of information. And we should have the resources available for them after they've had an abortion so that they can help recover. And ultimately, we should put laws in place to protect preborn children from abortion, because by doing so, we protect the women who would have had an abortion from the consequences that are coming down.
Yeah, for sure. I understand there's a reduced percentage of having a baby, being able to conceive afterward. That's reduced after abortions as well. Of course, it doesn't mean everybody who's had an abortion won't be able to have a baby, but the percentage goes down. So something worth considering there as well. And again, I really do appreciate what you're saying, that I think we should have laws in the book requiring medical professionals to actually share and explain all the potential negatives that can go along with having an abortion before you choose to have that abortion. And again, that's where an ultrasound comes in very handy as well, when you actually see what or who you're aborting. Okay, so pretty important stuff. Let me ask you about another one that's active here in Alberta, and that is parental consent. Apparently not required in
Nope.
this province if you want to have an abortion. So you're a minor, you might be 13, 14, 16, you don't need parental consent. Now, I'm guessing there's probably provinces elsewhere in Canada where you do. I'm hoping that's the case,
No.
but nowhere in Canada.
Nowhere in
Wow.
Canada. Yeah.
So, well, I mean, you need parental consent for crying out loud to go on a field trip. You want to go to the zoo. I mean, how dangerous is that? You need parental consent. Now, this is incredibly life-changing. Why on earth would you not need parental consent?
It really is bizarre, especially like when you consider that if the school nurse needs to give your child an Advil, they need parental consent for that. But if your child wants to have an invasive medical procedure with significant downstream consequences, post-operation consequences, that's completely legal without even the parents being notified of it before or after.
Wow.
And it's bizarre. It doesn't even matter, like whether or not you are pro-life or pro-choice. This shouldn't it matter. You want to
Yeah.
be there for your child when they go through this.
Yeah,
Right.
this should not be an issue of whether you're pro-life or not. But this is a child you're dealing with.
Yeah,
Like,
children
blows
deserve
my mind. Yeah.
involved. It's a fundamental violation of the rights of children to separate them from their parents because they need the expertise, the wisdom, the support network of their parents in order to make difficult decisions properly because their brains are not fully developed and are not fully formed in order to make the right decisions that they don't have to live with a bad decision. And in particular, so they don't have to live with a bad decision alone. And to me,
Yeah.
that's what this is about. It's about protecting children in this situation by making sure the adults are there and are involved in the process and in fact are able to help them make the right decision.
Yeah. What kind of response do you typically get from politicians, if they're faced with this question? I think the vast majority of politicians get very uncomfortable when anyone brings up the topic of abortion, as does pretty much anybody in the public as well. They're just very uncomfortable talking about something.
That's the single quickest way to end a conversation with a politician is to ask them what they think about abortion.
Yeah.
But so you get that, but you also have some politicians like Garnet Janice, Arnold Viersen, members of parliament here from Alberta, who are openly pro-life, who are excellent pro-life spokespeople and fight actively for the preborn on Parliament Hill. You have a bunch in the legislature as well, who are openly fighting for life. You have Joseph Scow, who gave a pro-life speech on the floor of the legislature a few years back.
Mm-hmm.
You have Chantal de Jong, who was speaking at the March for Life here in Edmonton. So we have these politicians, but most of them, they want to avoid the issue and they don't want to have to take a stand on it. A lot of them, in particular on the conservative side, will say they're pro-life, but hope that they never actually have to prove that they're pro-life. And that's
Yeah.
why some politicians have courage to start putting votes on the table to make the wishy-washy pick a side, and that allows us the citizens to decide whether we want to keep those politicians in office if they don't vote.
Well, I guess that's our job as regular folks to actually call members of parliament or your MLA and let them know how you feel. Yeah, again, graciously, kindly, don't be yelling at them, that sort of thing. But really important. Let me ask you, I guess, any advice you might have on, so you have neighbors or politicians or coworkers, whatever the case might be. Typically, the argument is, again, well, I'm pro-choice because, I'm pro, reproduction rights, okay? This is a right, so how can you be against this? Are you anti-woman? How do you respond to that?
So I tend to start with, do you believe that human beings have human rights? And almost everybody's going to say, yes, I do. You have a few monsters out there who say no. But for the most part, everybody in our society agrees that human beings have human rights. And then I ask, so would you agree that all human beings have human rights? Every last one of them. And if they say yes, then I say, so because we know at fertilization, a new organism of the species Homo sapiens comes into existence. In other words, that we have a new human being. Would you not agree with me that if all human beings have human rights, that human being does as well? And if not, why are you saying that some human beings don't have human rights? What's the difference between the born and the unborn? One gets human rights and the other doesn't. And then you just, it's a method that's taught by the Canadian Centre for Bioethical Reform called common ground analogy question, right? So you start with the common ground. Whatever response they give, right, women's rights, human rights, whatever you say, I actually agree with that. I believe that women do have inalienable rights to do to do what they want with their body in the same way that I have a right to do what I want with my body, and with the same limitations. One of those limitations being I can't use my body to kill another person. Right? And so you find the common ground, and then you make the analogy, and that's usually the trot out the toddler. So if a 1-year-old was in that circumstance, could you kill a 1-year-old? And if not, right? Why?
Yeah.
What's the difference between the 1-year-old and the preborn that allows you to kill one and not the other?
So it brings the focus back on, not choice or anti-woman or pro-woman, but, what is this thing, this being that we're talking about?
Yeah.
And is this little one a human or not? And that's really what the choice is, isn't it?
Exactly.
Choice to leave this little one to live or not. Real briefly, where do you see the abortion issue, I guess, going over the next decade?
I don't honestly know. We're in a period of immense transition in our politics across the Western world, whether it's about international relations, domestic economy, the rise of nationalism, the rise of of trade nationalism, of protectionism. You have disruptive populist elements, because there's an entire part of our society that's not had a seat at the table, that's now demanding a seat at the table, which is fair enough. But it's disrupting politics as usual. So it's not a negative thing, but it's a change. And so how this all breaks down is going to be determined by how well Christians respond to it.
It comes back to us, doesn't it?
Yeah.
I'm out of time here, but I want to send people to your website here as well, the wilberforceproject.ca. Get a hold of some of that information you can take to your MLAs, and of course sign some of the petitions. Thank you for your time. Thank you for watching. This is important stuff, man. All right, WizeUp.ca. God bless.